Yeah.
What is going on, beautiful people? Welcome into Indianapolis, Indiana, site of the 2022 NFL Scouting Combine. Our last day broadcasting live here. Buck Rising here with you until 1 o'clock. We got Lucas back in the studio. We got Kirby, Allen Kirby. We got Will Bowling. And we got Jon Ledyard, who we have a lot of conflict between Ledyard and I. It's lovely to see you, by the way. Always a pleasure.
It's great to see you. It would have been great to see you last night, too, out at dinner. But I guess, I know big shots like yourself got these busy schedules, and you got to keep up appearances and kiss babies and shake hands. I understand.
What are you going to do? But we're happy to have Jon. We're going to talk about the prospects. Yes, so the whole principle of this is I was supposed to take you out to dinner because of how many times you have appeared without a fee on this radio
That's
show.
Right, I forgot.
I
forgot. You could have just let it go. I would have forgotten.
No. We like transparency around here. We got to lean in since we're here already. And so instead of buying you a meal, you invited me to dinner with a bunch of our other friends who are here covering the Combine. And not only did I not pay for your meal, I didn't even show up for this one because I got steak drunk at St. Elmo's and crawled into bed at like 7:15.
Hey, it's not a big deal at all. We just sat there for about 45 minutes waiting for you before we started eating, and it was fine, No, I'm kidding. It was a good time.
Oh, the worst. Jon Ledyard at Ledyard NFL Draft is where you can follow him on the socials for all of his great draft insights. We have a lot to discuss over the course of today's show, but you and me, Jon, we got to start with this 40 times yesterday.
Yeah.
This was ridiculous to see the times that were coming out. You had a unofficial new record with Tyquan Thornton, 4.21, which would have broken John Ross's record by 0.1. If the record goes official, you had guys like Chris Olave out there running 4.26 at this point. So not only is he apparently the best route runner in the draft, he's also like one of the fastest wide receivers
ever
to be created. What the hell is happening with these numbers? This cannot be possibly accurate.
They weren't accurate. That was the thing that made it so frustrating. Is you got Olave running a 4.26, and then official times come out and he runs a 4.39, and it's like, well, we would have been great with a 4.39 before we thought he ran a 4.26.
Right.
Now that we thought he ran a 4.26, it ruined the whole thing. Guy didn't run a second 40 because he thought he just ran a 4.2 for the first time in his life.
Well, how could you not? And if you're his representation, you're saying, hey, don't get back out there. It's done.
Never run again. 4.2, or you can. So they were. Still a very fast wide receiver group. Still a great performance at the Combine, no question. It's hilarious. Agents probably don't find it as funny, but these night 40s, for whatever reason, the agilities have just fallen off the cliff.
Right.
Three cones and shuttles are just atrocious the last couple of years.
There were two guys on the three cone that were sub 7?
Yes.
That's insane.
You go back 3 years ago, there was 18. Year before that, were 23.
Yeah.
That's how different it is right now.
So I feel like maybe that might be too inside baseball for the casual football fan listening at home. What guy, I guess, is kind of the value of that specific drill for the wide receiver position?
Honestly, not much for a wide receiver specifically.
Sure.
If you're asking, especially three cone, think about the three cone drill. For people who don't know, it's like an L drill, and so you are literally bending around a trio of cones as you run. Now, it is always better to be more athletic.
Yes.
Period. In life, in football, whatever.
Just generally.
It always helps to be more athletic. But it is not an exercise where I would look at it and say, oh, this is indicative of this guy, if he can't run a good three cone, he can't be good at wide receiver, or he's going to have this limitation to wide out. I don't feel that way. Shuttle, maybe a little bit more. It's change of direction, but it's change of direction over 10 yards at speed. That's not necessarily what you're always going to have. You're not moving side to side a lot as a wide receiver. You're running vertically and then snapping right off in another direction. So actually starting things would be even better than some of the drills and exercises that they do. So I don't really care about those two exercises that much for wide receiver. Obviously, whenever somebody's in the bottom tier, it's somewhat concerning. But overall, they're way more important things than the agility. So I wouldn't freak out too much about it. It's just interesting that all the results have just gone off a cliff. That should send huge red flags that these results can't probably be trusted moving forward.
Well, and this is the whole conversation around the Combine at large. We'll talk about actual prospects momentarily, but just the just how antiquated this whole thing is outside of the fact that, hey, we're going to poke and prod you and find out if your knee works or if you're recovering from your shoulder labrum surgery from your college football season or whatever. Like, outside of that, the NFL people have to be looking at this and being like, all right, we'll catch them at their pro day when things are more relevant, when they're in more comfortable settings and we can act. I mean, because nothing is changing here. The film is the film.
Right, exactly right. Nothing's changing in terms of the film. You're taking certain results for certain positions and taking them more seriously than other positions. 40 definitely matters for wide receivers, especially weight adjusted. 40s, not all these wide receivers are built the same way. I mean, you literally have guys like Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and Jahan Dotson all running great times in the low 4.3s, high 4.4s range of 40s. But you have to remember, those guys are like 35 to 40 pounds less than a guy like Traylon Burks who's running in the 4.5s. That's a really good time for Burks. Did we think he'd run faster? Yes, we did. We thought he'd run in the 4.4s. So we'll see what he does at his pro day and everything like that, obviously. But that's still, for his size, when you weight adjust these things and you think about how much bigger he is and thicker he is than some of those other guys, to be even in that range with them is a pretty good indication. You got a really fast guy there. And so some of these results are you're going to be improved upon at pro days. Almost all of them, if people try, will be improved upon at pro days.
People try.
It was still a very good – I mean, it was a great performance by the wide receivers. Clearly a very athletic group. There's some questions on tape with guys more than other classes, but it's a very good wide receiver class for sure.
Jon Ledyard of Pewter Report is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. At Ledyard NFL Draft is where you can follow him. So when you came to Indianapolis this time around, understanding everything that we know about this draft class, where the depth is, particularly in the trenches, interesting wide receiver prospects, and less than ideal at the quarterback position, what was the one thing that you wanted to find out? What was your objective when you came to Indianapolis this week?
Well, first of all, to eat a lot of steak. That was the biggest thing, probably.
Two, to have me pay for the steak.
Yes,
except
so
not
that
show
didn't
up.
work out at all. Number three probably would be just in general, I love to go around. I'm not a psychologist or anything, but I love to go around and listen to the different players speak and hear how they talk about the game and how they articulate things. It doesn't necessarily mean I feel like I know them that great. Sometimes you feel like you get a great feel for who the player is as a person. Sometimes you don't, but you can guess how teams are going to perceive them in the interview process. That's valuable to me to some extent because I don't get the same insight into the players the teams will. I don't get to talk to all their position coaches going up from Pee-wee to, I don't get to do that. So I don't have the same access to knowing who they are as a person, so this is really my only opportunity to do that in person for most of these players. So I try and take advantage of as much as I can, pop to as many podiums as I can, especially for the players I'm going to have rated highly on my board. I'd like to, them to not show up like Malik McDowell did a couple years ago where he was just hostile to everyone at his podium and you just sensed right away there were bad vibes. And rarely is it that extreme, but just in general, I think that you can get a feel for some things about the players' personalities and whether that'll appeal to teams or not.
To bring it back to a local tie, we were basically doing a show before the show started, and we've been talking a lot. We're going to talk a lot throughout the course of today's show about the Tennessee prospects. There's four of them here: Cade Mays, Alante Taylor, Velus Jones Jr., and Matthew Butler. And Velus Jones Jr. This is somebody we spent time on when you came on with us at the Senior Bowl, because he is so interesting because you don't see guys with those kind of traits at his age without red flags, because he's 25 years old and he's playing against guys who are 4 and 5 years younger than him.
Right.
But there's no necessarily baggage there that would indicate that there's a problem with this player. What do you make of him specifically, and has this process this week kind of enlightened anything about him to you?
Yeah, I mean, you look at his production profile in college, it's stunningly bad. Like, he had no catches his first year, 2016 at USC. 6 catches for 46 yards, no touchdowns his next year. 2018, 24 for 266 yards and a touchdown. The next year, as a junior in the Pac-12, he had 6 catches for 35 yards and no touchdowns. Then he goes to Tennessee, and he catches in 2020 22 balls for 280 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Then this past year, 6th year in college, he catches 62 balls for 807 yards and 7 touchdowns. So he finally gets on the map, but he's 24 years old.
Yeah.
Going up against 19 and 20-year-olds. Like, that's a massive age. And there has been analytics have run tons of studies on age breakout ages for wide receivers. And I don't even buy 100% into the idea, but with a guy like this, it has to matter. Like, if he's going to be in the NFL at 25 years old as a rookie, he's going to turn 25 years old before his rookie season starts. That by itself is extremely rare. With a production profile like his, it is very hard to trust that. But he has done just about everything you can do in the pre-draft process to make people forget he was great at the Senior Bowl. He was one of the best wide receivers there. He got open a ton. He made good adjustments to balls. He's clearly one of the fastest, most athletic receivers at the Senior Bowl. Then he goes to the Combine and proves it. I think he ran 4.31 officially was his final 40 time. Like, that is doing everything you possibly can do. And he's not a small guy either. I didn't see his weigh in here, but I know he's around the 6 foot, 200 pound. He's well built.
He's a solidly built wide receiver.
What happened? Why wasn't he more? It's just a very strange profile, and teams are going to have to do a lot of digging, I think.
Well, and I think for Vols fans, given that we're based out of Nashville, like when you kind of look to see where your favorite players are going to go in the league, like I think NFL talent evaluators, for the same reason that like Matt Corral is an interesting study, because in that system, passes don't travel more than 5 yards very often. So you're trying to figure out exactly what a player like that can do and what that skill set projects to. With Velus, you're looking at the offense under Josh Heupel, and everybody's catching 60 passes for 5 touchdowns and all. I mean, it's so you don't know how much is inflated by the situation that they're in, especially at the college level when it's so much easier to manifest offense.
It's just crazy. I mean, if you're 4'3" and that size in college, you should like get 500 yards, 700 yards every year by accident. Like you just don't need that much more in college to usually be productive. So, I mean, definitely some concern that he wasn't getting that before, but maybe coaches were misusing it. There's just a lot of digging the teams and myself too, when I finally finalize his grading, are going to need to do on his profile, because the fact that he's 25 is really important in the conversation, because you have to think about it in terms of the context of a lot of the players he's going up against are on a developmental curve that could lead them as better prospects, but almost everybody changes from 18 to 19 to 20 to 21 and improves their prospect profile. If they're even draft prospects, they might not even be draft prospects, they're still going to improve from that point in time. So you have to remember that he's going up against this past year when he finally produced. That he's going up against players so much younger than him, and that matters. But there's still just a really interesting athletic and physical profile there for him.
So for your process, and Jon Ledyard of Pewter Report is here. At Ledyard NFL Draft is where you can follow him. We're breaking down the NFL Combine live from Indianapolis, as always, presented by Scoreboard Bar and Grill. When will you finalize your grades throughout the course of this process? Because obviously we still have a considerable amount of time for the draft. How do you go about this for people listening at home?
Yeah, I have a numerical grading scale that I use for the players. So I grade everybody. Every position group has 10 categories, and I basically give them a numerical grade on a 0.5 margins based on each category and how well they do in those categories. So for wide receivers, for example, speed is obviously one, route running ability is one, ball skills, which include hands and ability to adjust to the ball outside your frame, that's another one. So I kind of take all these categories and I give them numerical values within the categories, then add it up, and depending on what the number spits out when I divide it by the total, that determines what kind of grade did they get. And if I think the grade's totally off, I'll go back and look at the tape and say, okay, maybe he's a little better in this area, and but usually it gives a grade that's indicative of where I see them on their board. And that process for me, covering the Bucs and having a million other things on my plate outside of just draft prospects now, that prospect for me will finish probably less than 24 hours before the draft. No, hopefully the week of the draft. I won't watch 300 players like I used to, Buck, but I'll try to watch 100 to 150 players and have at least 150 board graded for me at the end.
Down among the lowly beat writers now, and also being the draft guru. It's difficult. It's difficult now that you're slumming it with the rest of us.
Not everybody can wear all these hats and kill the game, but your boy's trying.
Jon Ledyard, at Ledyard NFL Draft is where you can follow him. Always a pleasure, even if I have not yet paid up for all of these appearances. At some point, the bill is going to come due. Are you here the rest of this weekend?
I'm here till Saturday, so tomorrow. Yeah,
all right, there's an opportunity for this to still happen.
Yeah, but I'm not making any plans because I'm not going to get my heart broken. So I'm just going to.
I tend to flake. I tend to flake. It's a bad habit. Thanks, Jon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, a shirtless Ron Slay apparently is going to join us coming up next.